Yeah. It was interesting for me I was always interested in ancient history, but I was never that interested in ancient mythology. But I really got into astrology, and then the mythology started to make sense. I understood the reason behind it, because all of these mythic stories have a basis of some kind in some reality for the people at that time. And for me, trying to understand any object can begin by simply looking at the myth of the object's mythology for the name, whether it's Chiron or Uranus or whoever it is. Look to the mythology and see what that's about. What was their story? You have mythology of history, and then you have the myth story, which is the combination of the myth and the history. So here we go. There's Cornelia. Bada bing. All right. Okay. Let's see. I'll start by saying welcome to everybody. I see some familiar faces, some haven't seen in a while, and some new faces. I see some people that are new members. I remember from just saying hi to you like within the last day or so.
Wow.
So I want to thank you all for being here. Spencer, now that you're drinking, I'll
What? Use my coffee.
Yes, it was just your coffee. I know. It's your Irish. Anything you want to say before we try to get started here?
Well, I think most of it will come out as we start the talk. I just want to say something will probably, when we put it in the talk too, but I have coined the phrase, for my understanding of Chiron, is he's a cometoid, because he doesn't quite fit a planet that goes all the way around. It's kind of is involved in as a comet in our own solar system, and how that 50-year cycle that he has between Uranus and Saturn is very interesting. And so I didn't want to make him an asteroid. I didn't want to make him a planet, and he is a comet, some people say. So I just said cometoid. So if I talk about cometoid, just know what I'm talking about. That's all.
Okay. Anybody have any announcements? Let's see. Lynn, I know you've got a new
beginner's class. Yeah,
beginner's
starting
class
tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, at 7:30 Central Daylight Time. If anybody, it'll be on Zoom.
That's PM, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not a morning person, so no, never AM. So
I used to be when I had a regular job, but
I forced myself, but not naturally. So
no more. If it's a morning and I'm still up, it's because I'm still up.
Yeah.
Not because I got up. It's rare. Okay. Let's see who else is doing things. Anybody else is doing any things special coming up? Any classes, offering any programs? We like to support as many people as we can. Yes, Katarina.
Hey, I'm still inviting people into my Uranian Times think tank. There's a member page up on Facebook if you'd like to be to connect. Something that I started as a think tank about doing, not just looking at charts of individuals, but really looking at the greater good and long cycles. Like if we were tied it to the Chiron, we're at a 51-year return to Earth Day.
Yeah.
This year. And it's partially funded by ESAR. I got a grant through International Society of Astrological Research to think about long cycles. Yeah. Thanks.
It's a great page. Anybody else? Anybody
Can
else?
you share it, Katrina, in the Santa Monica Facebook group or somewhere?
Yeah, I have many times.
Is it?
And
okay, I'm gonna go there. Thanks.
Yeah, if you go to Uranian Times think tank, it's there. And I can repost again here or on the chat.
Yeah, you're all invited. If you're not a member, you're all invited to join our Santa Monica Astrology Facebook page. And if you're doing anything astrologically related, you're welcome to post to it. let people know. It's not a big group yet, but it's growing. So many people here. I've got 2 pages worth of stuff. Okay, anybody else have anything else before we get down to business?
Could someone share the page in the chat or something? Your page?
I'm sorry, who, where?
The page from the group.
I have one
here.
thing.
Yes.
The last ESAR publication of their magazine had a review of Kid Wheels that was very good.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. Also, I think the current issue of Mountain Astrologer had something in there about, was that about Chiron in there, Spencer? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it had
Yeah.
some-
Oh, really?
And also
Yes.
some information on, there's also an article there on cycles, which is very
There's
interesting.
several articles in there and they're all about life cycles, whether it's the Uranus, Pluto, Chiron, right? Or not Pluto,
Ooh,
Chiron,
let me find it.
regressions. So yeah, there's a lot of great articles about the cycles in that this month's issue.
Hang on, as soon as here we go. Control. Yeah. Chat. Come back here. Everyone.
I just want to say I like Martin Lass's book on Chiron. I have this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of more and more. There's a lot of good information out there about Chiron. And like I say, I encourage, if you're not, I don't encourage people to go out and buy books. I mean, I don't discourage you from buying books if you can. But I certainly encourage people to look for different sources. And like find what resonates best with you. Look at where it falls in your world. And okay, so here's the link to our Facebook page, the Santa Monica Astrology Meetup group. And boom, boom, boom. Anything else? Well, there's always, we'll have time in the end before we get into.
I was going to ask if Carolyn
Yes.
could hold up that book. She said that it was a large book I haven't seen for Chiron that she uses. Just if you hold that up so I could see it on our screen.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you see it?
Yeah,
I like it. It's one of the first ones I read on Chiron. I have the other ones too. Melanie Reinhardt and
Martin Loss. Okay.
yeah, Martin Lass.
Lass. Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. Let us get to the main program. Here we go. Oops. Here, I guess I need to do. Let's go back to here. I'm no, wrong button. Where am I? Here I am. Okay. I guess I need to do a screen share, don't I? Otherwise, I'll be looking at it and you'll be looking at me. Share. Start slideshow. Come on. There we go. Sign from anybody, or are you seeing the slideshow? Oh, goody
Yes.
goody. Okay.
Yes.
So Spencer and I have been talking about this for a little while, and we've been working on it fairly extensively, having a lot of conversations about Chiron and the different books about him and the stuff. And what kind of got me going was the simple fact that when we talk about Chiron, most people talk about, oh, Chiron, the wounded healer, and then they go off down that tangent. And the reality is, hang on, we got more people in the waiting room, and let's just let everybody in. When you look at his mythology, his mystery, his story, there is a whole lot more to Chiron than the wounded healer. He was a healer long before he was wounded, and the wounding came late in his life. All right, so today we're going to talk about some of that other stuff and try to convince you that there's other things you need to look for when you look at Chiron in a chart. Not saying the wounded healer doesn't apply, it does, but there's so much more that applies. So there you go, the official stuff, Santa Monica Astrology, Zoom meetup, September 12th, Spencer and May. What do we mean more than the wounded healer? Well, yeah, we see it in some of the book titles. It's a key to the outer planets, the Rainbow Bridge. And as I've said, the answers to the mystery of any planet or object lies in their mythic history. And I think of that, I think of astrology as bringing that mystery down from the sky to the earth. How does it impact us? How do it play out in our lives? Because basically we are a mix of archetypes that play out in different ways. So our agenda, we're going to look at start by looking at his discovery chart. And from there, we're going to look at some of the mythology. We'll look at the astronomy of Chiron, his physical attributes. And we'll go into some astrology of Chiron and some of his other attributes. And then we've got a bunch of charts. And I'll tell you up front, we probably won't get through them all. We'll take time for summary and Q&A as well. The slideshow will be converted into a PDF file. It'll be uploaded to the Facebook page. So anybody who wants it can download it. And anybody else, if you want it, you just send me an email and I will send it to you. The video recording of this will also get posted. And the link will get sent out to everybody who's posted to the Facebook page and sent to everybody in the Meetup group and so on. Okay, moving along. Here it is. They're just coming from everywhere. It's so wonderful. So I can get this out of the way a little bit better, but and move it down here. Oops. All right. Okay. So here's Chiron down here at 3 Taurus. This is his discovery chart from November 1st, 1977. Time approximate 9:56 a.m. Pasadena, California. The rainbow's pot of gold. That's the Sabian symbol for this degree of Taurus, Chiron's discovery degree. Spencer, you want to say a few things about the chart?
Well, I first of all was flabbergasted about the rainbow pot of gold that we found in the Sabian symbols. I mean, how could we have the exact thing of the rainbow bridge and the different ways that we can harvest insights, which are kind of like a pot of gold for us, that would be that accurate? That was one of the things that I really was flipped out about. Also, I was kind of flipped out about that there is a stellium in Scorpio, which gives a lot of concept of what, Scorpion has a lot of different versions of where wounding could take place, or at least looking at different things. And also the thing in Libra, I would count that as a stellium merely because the North Node is so close to Pluto. And I think that really adds another aspect to Chiron's discovery. If you know, the node is right by the midheaven. And so I think that that's very interesting. Also, his first wounding came in the 4th house because he was rejected by his mother and understands alienation. So that's about what my immediate response to the chart was.
Okay,
Jim,
dokie. Let's
Jim,
see. You'll notice
Jim,
over
this
here
is-
on the tables under modes, there was only one mutable.
but
And
Jim,
let's
this
see.
is Rita.
Yes,
Can I ask
Rita.
a question?
Sure.
I don't know what a rainbow's pot of gold is, and I don't know why you picked this date to put this chart up. Could you explain that, or are you going to?
Well, this is the date that it was that Charles Kowal was looking at plates, they're called, which are large astronomical photographs of the sky, and was able to clearly identify Chiron as a new object, as a separate
Oh,
distinct
okay.
object. And so this is the time that day. He discovered it on November 1st. The plate itself was actually made on October 18th. But this is the date that he was looking at the plate, and it was just before 10 o'clock that he realized, holy cow, look, there's something here that is moving. Whoops. That's when he discovered it. And of course, the rainbow spot of gold is, of course, the Irish and the leprechauns. There's always a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, you know. And so whether the Sabian symbol helped to inspire Barbara Hen Clow and her title, or it just happens to be a coincidence. And since there aren't any coincidences, it would be. We'll look at this again later, because I have the chart for Chiron's discovery and also the natal chart for Charles Colwell, who was given credit for discovering Chiron. So there are some indications that somebody may have spotted it, much earlier, but it wasn't clearly identified as such.
James,
Yes.
James, could I just say something?
Please do.
Hello, everybody. Anyway, I'm here. Thank you for letting me in. But I wanted to say, for me, I think there's a kind of a synchronicity in terms of that 1st of November, 1977, which I find very interesting with Chiron, because that's actually the Day of the Dead.
Yes.
I find that quite interesting myself, as a kind of a coincidence or a synchronicity as to that is actually when the official day of discovery of Chiron.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
I hadn't really crossed my mind, but yes, it is the Day of the Dead. Is it also All Saints Day, or is that the second?
All Saints Day, because I'm the second, which is Dia de las Almas, which is the Day of the All Souls. Simona, we have the same.
Yeah, November 1st is All Souls, because it's Halloween is the eve of All Hallows.
Yeah.
So I think the Day of the Dead is the second, actually. I'm not sure, but
I think you're right.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're both days of the dead. That's that night between the 1st and the 2nd. The
Yeah.
Catholics made it the Saints Day on the 1st and the Souls Day on the 2nd. But the pot
Yeah.
of gold is the underworld, the Hadean realm.
Right.
Simona and I know lots about.
Now,
Well, I'm going to say, nobody needs to take on this, but for me personally, that has an incredible meaning. And I'm not going to delve into this, but in fact, my mother took her life on the 2nd of November.
Oof.
Yeah, yes, okay, but at the same time, in fact, when I finally found her chart, which was many years after she died, I actually found that she actually has Chiron on the ascendant.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just found, and where she touches me in my chart is with her Chiron. So it's like very, for me, it's an interesting kind of coincidence, synchronicity, which I still haven't quite worked out, but to me, that has big significance. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
No one needs to come in with anything, but I know it's a very sad thing to have happened, but I like to look beyond.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed when I have done charts of people is that there's always connections between my chart and their chart, and whatever those points are that connect, create the theme of what it's all about for us. One other point I want to make here is that the one mutable planet is Neptune in Sagittarius in the 12th house. The one Earth planet is Chiron in Taurus. So Chiron is also a singleton in that sense. But also for those who follow declinations, Chiron is, boy, this thing is sensitive. You'll see here in this column that Chiron is at 12 degrees plus 12, which is 12 north, and so is Saturn. So Chiron and Saturn are considered parallel, which some would say as well, it's kind of like conjunction, but yeah, they're on the same plane. It's like they're traveling in the same traffic lane. Okay.
Jim, real
Keeping-
quick question. Is
Yes.
the rainbow's pot of gold the Sabian symbol for Chiron at 3 Taurus?
Yes, it is the
Thank you.
Sabian symbol for the 4th degree of Taurus, or 3 Taurus.
3 to
Yeah.
4. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Can I interrupt and ask a question?
Yes.
In regard to that, I'm sorry. Also, I can't get my video to work. This is Martin Matzinger, so I apologize. I'm not trying to hide.
Oh, that's
But,
okay. You're allowed to hide anyway.
Okay, well, thank you. But my quick question, I thought whenever you're looking for a Sabian symbol, like the fact that it's retrograde would mean that you would use 3 degrees rather than 4 degrees in terms of Chiron's placement here. Like you go, oh, what symbol am I looking for? Am I looking for 3 degrees Taurus, or am I rounding it up to 4 degrees?
Well, what you're looking at is the symbol for 3 Taurus, which is technically the 4th degree of Taurus.
I see.
Because
I
the,
see.
the
You're doing
first
it
degree
that-
of Taurus is 0.
I see.
Yeah. So
So you are including the retrograde in the sense of it's going
yeah,
back
it's, yeah,
to
the
3.
retrograde really doesn't affect the Sabian symbol per se, because it's what is the symbol for the degree it's at that moment in time.
Okay. Thank you.
But you do bring up a good point. There are a number of, the Sabian symbol is the most popular one, or the most well-known one today. But there are a number of other systems that do have assigned symbols for all the degrees of the zodiac. And you do need to be careful when you're doing it to make sure how they are numbering things. Because in some cases, where are we? Here we go. They start with 1, which be, the first degree as the 0 degree. And so they go 1 to, they go 1 to 29, or they number, how they number it. So you're making sure you're sure that you're getting the right symbol. Some go 0, start with 0, and some start with 1. But we may do a session on that at some point next year, where we talk about the various systems of degree symbols. Okay. All right. So one of my side interests is genealogy, and so I did a little. This is kind of a genealogy of the major players in the Chiron mythology. Okay. Now, the name Chiron derives from Chiro, which is Greek for the hand, chiromancy or palmistry, and the chiropractic, for a couple of examples. Now, within the Greek mythology, and there's a variety of stories and variations on all of this, but this is kind of like a summary of the generalities of it all. But so initially there was chaos, the void, and from chaos came Gaia, the Earth Mother. Gaia gave birth to Uranus. Now, there you go, Immaculate Conception. And then Gaia and her son Uranus gave birth to the Titans, such as Saturn and Rhea and Oceanus and Tethys and Attis and Corius and Phoebe and others. And you'll notice that there's a whole lot of, incest going on in the family, because there wasn't a big family to pick from. All right, so Saturn and Rhea, who are technically brother and sister, they give birth to Zeus and Hades and Poseidon and others. And if you want to look at the mythology, okay, so Uranus was concerned that one of his sons would take his place, and so he ate them all. But Gaia didn't like that, and so she tricked him with Saturn, and then Saturn deposed Uranus. But then Saturn had the same family fear that one of his children might depose him. So he was doing the same thing his father did and eating them all. But again, his wife Rhea, along with his mother Gaia, tricked him. And so along came Zeus and the others, and they were able to overthrow Saturn. All right. So we have Saturn and Rhea, brother and sister. We then have Oceanus and Tethys, another brother and sister combination, and they create the Oceanids, like 3,000 ocean nymphs, I guess you could call them. They're important. Petis and his niece, Asia or Clymene, depending upon your storyline, both of whom were Oceanids, gave birth to Prometheus, who plays a role in a little bit. And then Croesus and Phoebe, again, brother and sister, they gave birth to Leto. She shows up again. So Zeus, son of Saturn, marries his first cousin, Leto, daughter of Croesus and Phoebe, and they give birth to Apollo and twin sister Artemis. Of course, then Zeus, as the gods always do, they manage to have affairs with everybody around. Alcmene, they give birth to Hercules. Now, Saturn has an affair with Thyra, an Oceanid, who's his niece, and she gives birth to Chiron. So this makes Chiron a half-brother to Zeus and a first cousin of Apollo, Prometheus, and Thyra, his mother. Remember, any of you remember that old song, I'm My Own Grandpa? Probably not. So all of this shakes out. All of it shakes out. So Chiron is the son of Saturn and the grandson of Uranus. That's the key of all of this.
Can I say something here?
Can I just say, if everyone was muted, you're a little distorted, your voice, but if everyone was muted while you're talking, we could hear you a little better. So,
Okay.
Can I say one thing here?
Oh, please do.
Well, I had someone come to me who was involved in incest, and I looked up incest in Google and was led, incest was not that uncommon to different cultures, particularly like the Egyptians. And I was stunned by that because it's such a taboo in so many that I was sure that I would discover that. But I would like to point out that in some of the early civilizations, this was not necessarily considered a taboo, but it was a way of keeping land and everything within the family. And that's all I want to add to that. But it is, I'd like to point out that this is not so surprising when you look it up and then look how it was dealt with by the different civilizations, the Sumerians and other.
Yeah, it seems to have been fairly common, particularly at the top of the pyramid of the hierarchy of these societies. Ancient Polynesian cultures, often the male and female king and queen, whatever titles they may have had, were brother and sister. As Spencer pointed out, within the Egyptians, the pharaoh was often married to a sister or very close relative. And it seems to have something to do with, taking on that, maintaining that godlike quality. And if you think about it, nobody traveled very far. So the pickings were slim, and you usually ended up marrying somebody that you met at the family reunion, kind of thing. It was just otherwise which it also explains why in many times the ancient cultures there was a lot of tribal conflict, because you'd go and steal women from another tribe in order to expand your gene pool. And while you were stealing theirs daughters, they would come and steal your daughters, and it was kind of like a trade-off. All right, so Chiron's biography. So now, while Chiron is called a centaur, he really isn't one. Okay, true centaurs have the lower body and legs of a horse and the upper body of a human. They are generally considered to be as wild and untamed as horses. Originally they lived in the area around Mount Pelion in Thessaly, and they were basically born of Ixion and Nephele. Now, Nephele, Ixion had a crush on Zeus's wife Hera. Zeus didn't like that, so he tricked Ixion by creating a cloud formation that looks like Hera And so Ixion had his way with Cloud Hera, from whence came the centaur. Okay, fine. All right, so as the story goes, in this case now, Saturn was having his way with Philyra when his wife Rhea caught him in the act. Goes something like this: to escape, he turns himself into a horse, or he was in the guise of a horse at the time, as he withdraws and races away. So Philyra is impregnated. She gives birth to Chiron, who has the body and hind legs of a horse, but the forelegs, upper torso, arms, and head of a man. So early depictions of Chiron have him with basically the body of a man, but with the torso and hind legs of a horse attached. And then some of the later ones will show him as being more centaur-like. And, she becomes so disgusted with his appearance, she abandons him. I've highlighted some words along the way here to indicate things that are important in Chiron's life, and I think that are some of the other things one to consider rather than just the wounded healer. So Chiron's abandoned. I mean, he never knows his father, Saturn, abandoned by his mother. He's taken in by Apollo, who, with the assistance of his twin sister Artemis, teaches him. So Chiron's an excellent student. He learns the arts of medicine, herbs, music, archery, hunting, gymnastics. And I was trying to wrap my head around that one. What kind of gymnastics would you do if you had back end of a horse attached to you? Astrology and prophecy. And they helped him to rise above his beastly nature of the man-beast combination. So now Chiron was notable throughout Greek mythology for his youth nurturing nature and his knowledge and skill with medicine. He was credited with the discovery of botany and pharmacy. He teaches medicine to Asclepius. So a teacher, he's a teacher. Archery and other skills to Achilles and Jason and Hercules, Perseus, Ajax, and many other notables from Greek history and mythology. Chiron marries Chariclo. Chariclo is a nymph or an earth spirit. And she's noted for her skills as a midwife. They had 4 children at least. And in some accounts, Chariclo is described as the daughter of Apollo. Together with her mother-in-law, they were the nurses of the young Achilles. So mind you now, Chiron is born, abandoned. He's a student, he learns, he teaches, he marries, he has a family. Now he doesn't marry another centaur, he marries a wood nymph or an earth spirit. They have children. He's got the happy family life. All is going well. But then it happens. So there's a couple of different versions of the story. One of the centaurs had some special wine that he had gotten, and Hercules comes by and they open the bottle and they're celebrating. And of course, the aroma of the wine wafts in the breeze and attracts all the other centaurs because they were a lusty partying bunch. Or they were just having a good time. At any rate, they're showing off their skills. In one story, Hercules is shooting poisoned arrows at these other centaurs, killing them because they're creating havoc. And in another, it was kind of like an archery contest, and he's drunk and shooting arrows, poisoned arrows. At any rate, one of the arrows accidentally strikes Chiron. Could be in his thigh, could be his lower leg, could be in his hind hoof, somewhere on a back leg. Now, being the son of a Titan, Chiron is immortal and could not die. But unfortunately, the arrow was poisoned with the venom of a hydra. He can't heal himself. And so after this point, he is now, the wound doesn't heal and he's suffering with pain. Now we bring in some of the other players. Prometheus, who is credited by the Greeks with creating mankind. and stole the fire from the gods and gave it to man to help man become more civilized and improve their lot in life. Jealous Zeus, in order to get even, creates women and sends them down to the men. So for whatever reason, Prometheus only created men and then Zeus creates women. One of the women that Zeus creates and sends down is Pandora. And he gives her this special little box and says, don't open it, which is, of course, the wrong thing to tell anybody. She did, and all the troubles escaped. The only thing left in the box was hope. So that's the part of the Pandora's box story that a lot of people overlook. Everything didn't get out. Everything wasn't bad. All the bad stuff got out, but there was still hope left in the box. So for giving fire to man, Prometheus is punished by being chained to a rock where he has his liver pecked out each day by eagles. And then at night it grows back in again and he heals up. And then the next day it repeats and it repeats and it repeats and it repeats. So supposedly Hercules suggests to Chiron, tell you what, I got such a deal I got for you. Why don't you make an offer to Zeus to take Prometheus's place? Since you're suffering anyway. And, save Prometheus. Chiron agrees. Hercules goes to Zeus, arranges the exchange. Zeus was so moved by Chiron's willingness to take Prometheus' place that instead of chaining him to the rock, he releases Prometheus and places Chiron in the heavens as the constellation Centaurus. Thus endeth the question of rulership. But we'll get more to rulership a little bit later. Everybody with me? Here we go. Now, let's talk about the Rainbow Bridge. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of cultures have creation stories involving rainbows or rainbow bridges. One local example is the Chumash history, which says they were created on Santa Cruz Island. As their population grew, the island became overcrowded, and their Earth Mother, Hutash, made a bridge out of a long, high rainbow, which she stretched from the tallest peak on the island to a tall peak on the mainland, and sent the Chumash across the Rainbow Bridge to fill the world with people. Now, there's more to this story. There were some people that looked over the edge, got busy, fell off into the ocean, and she didn't want them to drown, so she turned them into dolphins. Around the time of Chiron's discovery was when the LGBTQ movement became more active and vocal. And they adopted the symbol of the rainbow, embracing all the colors of humanity. Now, from another bridge analogy here is Chiron's orbit takes him from the realm of Saturn, his father, out to Uranus, his grandfather, symbolizing the bridging of generations and perhaps the healing of dysfunctional family dynamics, also connecting the seen, Saturn, the most distant, the visible planets, with Uranus, the first of the invisible planets, the ones that we generally can't see with our unaided eye. So there's many bridge analogies built into all of it. Now, Chiron as the key. This information I got from Zane Stein's website. He has quite a number of pages dealing with Chiron and the other centaurs. I think it's called Chiron and Friends. You can actually get quite a bit of information there. You give it a good place to go and look and see, how well do you connect with what he has to say. The symbol contains a half-hidden perfect X cross pierced by the vertical shaft, which sits on an oval, not a circle. The oval is important because it kind of symbolizes Chiron's orbit because it's what is known as elliptical. That is, it gets close to the sun and then it gets very far away from the sun. Now, some say it's the letter K, which is to honor the discoverer, Charles Colwall. Others say the symbol for Chiron resembles an old key, and particularly like the old skeleton keys, which some of us are familiar with. And some, many say it's the key to the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and everything beyond the realm of the visible. What's a key? is something that enables one to gain or restrict access to some place or thing. Excuse me. A key can unlock a door to allow those on the outside to enter, or to allow those on the inside to leave. It allows you to lock your door after you leave to protect what you have inside. The doorway. Doorway is another analogy to Chiron. And this is the way Zane Stein explains it, and I find it very interesting. Doorway is in effect not belonging to either world. Take the doorway of a house. If you are outside, you cross through to go in, while if you're inside, you cross through to go out. And while the door may be part of the house and block entrance or exit when closed, the doorway itself is totally neutral. It belongs to both worlds or neither, depending on your point of view. And if you think of the walls of the house as being Saturn and everything in the house being the visible planet, and the outside of the house represented by Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and the centaurs and everything else out there that we don't really see, you can think then of the doorway itself can be seen as Chiron, because he comes in and at his closest approach gets just inside of Saturn's orbit and goes out so far that at his farthest point, he is beyond Uranus's closest point to the sun. Okay, the astronomy of Chiron. So here we go. What is Chiron? Consensus seems to be probably a captured comet. So could be a wayward asteroid or something else. Chiron does exhibit characteristics of a comet rather, appearing at times to have a coma or a halo around it and a tail. But it's also suggested that, like Saturn, Chiron may have rings, similar to Chariklo, his wife, who happens to be the largest centaur body. Now, centaur's in quotes because, remember, she's not a centaur. She's a earth spirit nymph. But what happened is Chiron was the first of these bodies discovered in this orbital between Saturn and Uranus. And so they basically, because he looks like a centaur, they called him they called the centaur. And as the others were called, they're all lumped into this category of centaurs. Thus, some of them are not actually centaurs within the story, within their mythology. So if you start to look at these other objects, keep that in mind, that they may be called a centaur in terms of astronomical classification, but they were not centaurs. So Chiron was the first member of this new class that orbit between the asteroid belt and the Kuiper belt. Now, here's a point of interest. So Chiron's closest approach to Saturn in modern times is around May of 720 Common Era. It came within 19 to 20 million miles of Saturn. And during this passage, it was so close to Saturn, and Saturn's gravity caused Chiron's orbit to shift. And because of this inclination, because of the inclination of Chiron's orbit to the ecliptic, it will never intersect Uranus. So it doesn't meet Uranus, because when it gets out into Uranus territory, it's above the ecliptic and too far for Uranus to influence it. But because of the gravitational influence of Saturn, there are limits to predicting Chiron's ephemeris. So most ephemeris won't go back much earlier than maybe 500. Yeah, any attempt to go back prior to 500 Common Era or forward more than a couple thousand years is subject to error, simply because Chiron's orbit is not stable like the planets. More of the astronomy. So here's the hard numbers, if you would. I'm a good Virgo. So we have the aphelion, which is the far or farthest point of the object from the sun, and the perihelion when it's closest to the sun. You'll notice Saturn doesn't vary a whole lot from 10 AU is Earth units, or how far the Earth is from the sun. So it's about 93, 94 million miles. So that means Saturn goes out to about 930, 940 million miles from the sun. And it comes into around 9 AU, or 800 and some. Chiron goes out to 18.865 AU when it's in Aries. And it comes into 8.431 when it's in Libra. Now, see, Uranus's maximum or farthest distance is 20.11, and its closest is 18.33. So we see there, because Saturn, okay, Chiron gets closer than Saturn to the sun, so it actually, its orbit actually comes within the orbit of Saturn. And at its farthest, it's beyond, it goes out into Uranian territory. So it goes past the point where Uranus is closest to the sun. Now, Chiron's elliptical orbit is 50.42 years. The eccentricity is a 0.3823. It's fairly eccentric, because if you think about it, so Pluto's eccentricity, for example, is 2.2488. So you can see it's much more eccentric than Pluto. And we all know that Pluto, is fairly eccentric because at times it comes inside of Neptune's orbit. Chiron's closest approach to the sun is when he transits the sign of Libra, where he will spend only anywhere from 15 months to maybe a couple of years, depending upon his retrograde cycle. And he's farthest from the sun in Aries, where he spends 8 years or more. That's quite a difference. And right now he's in Aries, so he's spending a long time in Aries. His retrograde periods will last anywhere from 129 days in Libra to maybe 157 days in Aries. So there's, again, quite a difference in terms of how long his retrograde lasts, depending upon whether he is close to the sun or farther from the sun. But also his stationing point. So when he's farthest from the sun in Aries, he will station, i.e., go retrograde or direct, when he's approximately 100 degrees from the sun. And when he's closer, it's more like 113 degrees from the sun that he changes to. Everybody with me so far? I'll flip right out there. Any questions? You? Anybody there? I see your smiling faces. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some of the astrology of Chiron. Okay, so when we say that, Spencer and I were talking about Chiron is more than the wounded healer. Here are some of the attributes, characteristics from his story. Okay, so he's cursed because he's born deformed. He's looks like a centaur, but not quite. It's something he's born with. He can't change it. It's not like he has a birthmark that can be removed, or a cleft palate that can be repaired, or 6 toes and you take one off. Abandoned by his father, then by his mother. So we have abandonment issues, which can be thought of as emotional wounding, early childhood wounds, injuries, wounds of a psychological nature rather than physical nature. He's raised by a foster father, Apollo. So now we're looking at foster children, foster parent. But he's a good student. Before anything else, after all of this, once he's taken in by Apollo, he becomes a very good student. He learns many things. He learns them well enough that he can then teach them, well enough that he can create things such as pharmacy and biology. He teaches Achilles archery and other physical skills, Asclepius medicine. He mentors Hercules with his 12 labors and Jason and his search for the golden fleece. He taught Asclepius medicine and healing. So he's a teacher healer. Now he does get wounded by the poison arrow during the centaur brawl, a physical wound. Keep in mind, this is later in life. This is not something that was with him. The physical wound is something that comes late in life, not with him throughout his life. And in the end, he sacrifices himself to save Prometheus. So there's an element of self-sacrifice, of doing for others, placing others before yourself. So all of these are things to keep in mind when you're looking at Saturn in a chart or Chiron in a chart. So here's some various keywords that come across for Chiron: healing, whole-making, rejection, maverick. Yeah, I personally was having a little trouble with this, and I think Spencer kind of helped me with it. But the maverick being someone who doesn't seem to fit in and may go against the grain. Breaking free, he broke free of his stereotype of a centaur. Qualifier, the quest, he helped Jason with his quest for the golden fleece. Dealing with foster parents, the idea that his name comes from the Greek word kairos, or the hand, so it's hands-on healing. He was a guide. He helped teach and guide these many famous people from Greek mythology and history. A turning point. There were many turning points in his life. He's the doorway, helping people move from the inner to the outer and outer back in again. You can think of him as a guru, teacher, mentor, therapy and therapist, dealing with issues of abandonment, self-sacrifice, but we also have the psychological and physical wounds. So there's a plethora of things that fall within the realm of Chiron. Rulership. All right, let's talk about the rulership question, shall we? It's often raised, what sign does Chiron or should Chiron rule? I think Barbara Hand Clow promotes the idea that, oh, he should rule Virgo. Well, here's a simple answer for you. What sign does he rule? None. Why? Chiron's not a planet. Planets rule signs. Comets, asteroids, and cometoids do not. He's not even big enough to be a minor planet. He's quite small in size. If you're going to come up with a potential ruler for Virgo other than Mercury, then it should probably be Ceres, the largest of the asteroids and the goddess of grain, because one of the, sometimes Virgo is often thought of as the grain goddess, the grain virgin, though that's not really who she was. The constellation of Virgo was where the goddess Astraea was placed. It was the last to leave Earth. He held out that there was some redeeming qualities in humanity. There had to be. But in the end, she gave up. And so she was placed in the heavens as Virgo. And in one story, in her outstretched hand, she holds the scales of justice, Libra. So literally, Virgo and Libra are linked through Astraea. Now, in another story, the ruler of Libra is Dike, the Greek goddess of justice. So, but at any rate, Chiron just doesn't fit. He doesn't really have any characteristics that are, he doesn't really connect with what we think of Virgo to be. I don't see him as ruling Virgo. Like I say, I don't see him ruling anything. Some make the argument that Chiron should rule Sagittarius, which is often depicted as a centaur. However, when you look at the mystery of Sagittarius, its roots go back to the Sumerian mythology. Eratosthenes associated it with Crotus, a mythic creature with 2 feet and a satyr's tail, who was a great archer and nurse to the 9 muses, all daughters of Zeus. And for his service, Zeus placed him in the heavens as the constellation Sagittarius. Not Chiron. And within this constellation of Sagittarius, there are some other things that star patterns that show up, teapot and stuff. So again, Chiron, no, not Sagittarius either. So why not Libra? Because Libra's also been suggested. But as I said, it's the scales of justice, either held in the outstretched hands of Australia or in the hand of the Greek goddess of justice, Dike. Again, not within the realm of Chiron. Chiron was not known as a judge, mediator. Though he does go from Saturn to Uranus, so perhaps he's trying to resolve the family dynamic dysfunction. Okay, so analysis of Chiron's placement. Well, here's some thoughts on how you might interpret Chiron in a chart. Where do you start? Okay. Before you all panic, I don't have. It's not a COVID cause. It's allergies and seasonal asthma. I would say start with the house placement, because a house is the stage on which he performs. So look at what does the house he is in represent. The house, I think, in this case, is more important than the sign. What is the Sabian symbol for Chiron's placement? What aspects does he make? These are his interactions with others. And you can look, all right, so where is the ruler of the sign he is in? Is there an aspect between Chiron and that sign ruler? Don't forget to check minor aspects. And then lastly, it's what sign is he in? Because the sign may color how he portrays or plays his role in the house on the stage that he is in. Yeah. Look at that. We're at charts already. And what is it? Oh, just after 1. So here's a list of charts. We have Bob Dylan, we have Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, we have Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Marilyn Monroe, Christine Jorgensen. For those of you who aren't familiar, she was a very well-known persona during the 50s and 60s, one of the first to have a sex change from male to female, who was very public and outspoken about it. There's the Stonewall riots, which, for those of you who don't know, was basically a gay bar in New York, and they basically rioted because of the police coming in to try to shut them. It lasted over a series of days, but it was one of the kind of the beginning of the gay community coming out and asserting itself. We've got the USA's first Pluto return chart, which is coming up next year. We've got a bi-wheel for Biden and Harris, a bi-wheel for Trump and Pence. We have a bi-wheel for Chiron and the discoverer Charles Kowal. And then I got a wild hair and decided, well, let's see, what would we see if we look at JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald, and assassination? Would there be connections there? What about Martin Luther King, James Earl Ray, and his assassination? Or Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and his assassination by Sirhan Sirhan. So we've got all those charts to take a look at. They'll all be part, if you don't get to them all, not to worry, because they'll all be part of the PDF file if you want it. Okay, so here we go. We start with Bobby Dylan. Chiron is over there at 27 Cancer. Sabian symbol, Indian girl introduces her college boyfriend to her tribe. And Spencer, this was one of your picks. So go.
Well, I think, first of all, if you look at the Sabian symbol, the Indian girl, Joan Baez, okay, let's take it that way. There's a lot of ways you can look at it. Introduces boyfriend to tribe. I mean, can you get more of that? She was so involved. Of course, she was a very famous folk singer at the time, and she brought him in, and he became very much involved with her tribe, which was the tribe of the resistance to the war and the civil rights march that was going on at that time. And I think that one of the things to look at here is that the ruler of, where's the ruler here? The ruler is Taurus here in the 5th house. And I think that he was definitely an artist. And the way that you look at that is that as an artist, he influenced that whole tribe and then brought it into his own when he went to electric, and which I think is interesting. His Mercury is in Gemini, so and conjunct, well, not really conjunct, but in the same, Venus is there as well, and the Sun. So I think that in one way, when you look at this Chiron and look at the ruler of the moon, and then the way it fits into Uranus and Venus, you have kind of a real picture here of his interest and his desire to communicate. And if in the 6th house, it's become his job, and he's become quite famous for his job. Also, there is a trine. I think that's a trine. I was not coming across so clearly on mine, but I think that Mars does trine Pluto, and it's something I think that we could look at and also see that he brought out a lot of things. The Mars in the 2nd house, the guy made a ton of money off of all of this. He sold his song set for $200 million. So I think there's a lot of things that you could, if you work off the rulership of Chiron, and then point out that as a student or looking for partnerships, he was kind of an outcast from his group because he was kind of overly outgoing and got into music that was not that time so popular, because he was, before he became a folk singer, he was trying to play in a rock and roll band in high school. And it's only through Joan Baez that we got him into folk music. So I think it's pretty interesting to go through all that. And then, of course, the nodal structure here is very interesting as well. So those are my thoughts on that. And I welcome anyone else who want to add to something like that. But the only thing I want to go back to again, Indian girl introduces college boy to her tribe, is Joan Baez. And he's the college boy that she introduced. And that was really, it amazes me that the pot of gold and the rainbow is something that we look at. And it also amazes me that the Sabian symbol, I'd be very curious to see how our Sabian symbols work out in the rest of our studies of these different charts that we're going to observe. And I want to say one more thing about the North Node here and the huge stelliums he's got in Libra and in Taurus. This is a man that was really destined, you might say, for fame and for making himself very well known. And the North Node really brought in another aspect, and it's kind of squared by Mercury, which means he was driven to different ways of dealing with his own success and his own way that he would express himself. And I'm kind of a Dylan aficionado, and there are a lot of tapes and other albums from that to show he's really done a lot of diverse music. And so that I'm talking too much. Let me just jump off there, and everyone else be free to jump in and disagree or say what you see in this chart.
I'd like to ask a question. Didn't at some time in his career did he have a kind of a religious conversion.
Yes, he was a Christian for about 3 years or 2 years. He wrote a favorite song, which was "You've Got to Serve Somebody" during his Christian period.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of the only really memorable song that came out of that period.
A couple of points. Looking at the modes, he has one planet or point in a cardinal sign, and that one is Chiron. So Chiron is a cardinal singleton. He has one in fire, and that one fire is Pluto in Leo. Chiron makes sextiles to the Uranus, Jupiter, and Taurus, and also to the North Node, Neptune and Virgo. So sextiles can be very powerful aspects, even though they aren't thought of that way, in terms of connecting things. There's an astronomical phenomenon known as Lagrange points, which basically has to do with the point of gravitational equilibrium between a large central body and a smaller body that orbits it. And two of those points are at 60 degrees on either side of the smaller body. So in essence, the Chiron is kind of like caught. Those points, that Neptune, North Node, Chiron, Jupiter, Uranus, they're all trapped, or they're all in this it's a comfort zone. They feel they're safe there. And so they work very well together. Uranus, the uniqueness, Jupiter, the expansion. He's got Mercury out of bounds north and Pluto out of bounds north as well. So that Mercury out of bounds north in Gemini is going to give him that unique voice to speak to society. Going once, going twice, moving on. Next up, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She was known for her work involving death and dying. She was a psychiatrist. She has Chiron at 1 Taurus 49. The Sabian symbol is an electrical storm. So she was really one of the first to delve into that, the mysteries of death and dying and the fascination, our obsession with it. And she also came up with the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah, I think she's quite a teacher in one level here.
Yes.
Mhm.
And it became her big point. And also the sun next to Pluto would add to that in a certain way. Where's Venus?
Right, and also that she's got those 4 planets, stellium, moon approaching Pluto, conjunct sun, conjunct North Node, you know, that, but how do you see Chiron tying in? Jim?
Well, Chiron chimes in basically because of it's a sextile to the moon, but Chiron, it's the electrical storm, and she's dealing with the psychological symptoms and which is all part of our electrical network, if you would, of the human body.
Well, the Taurus is
And-
the body, the
And
physical
Taurus
body.
is the body.
Yeah, there it is.
And I would say also, let me see if I can unmute and undo the, okay, I'd also add that in general, if you think about her life of helping people with grief and helping people with death, that's the ultimate bridge too, when we're talking about a bridge.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
You know, if you
And-
look at the ruler of Chiron, it's Venus in Virgo in the third
Gemini.
communication, and then it's, you know, Mercury is in in Leo, right? Is that Leo sign there?
Yeah, Venus is in Gemini, Mercury's in Leo.
So she has this whole involvement with work. Her work brings her Leo-like attention, which I think is another way of looking at what she was involved with. And of course, this sun being then conjunct the Pluto, which is ruling that Leo in the fifth house. I mean, I think when you trace the different ways of looking at the rulerships of that Chiron, it takes you on an adventure of looking through really various stages of her life.
Yeah, and the and the sun is, I mean, while you've got Pluto, Sun, North Node very close together, the sun is basically at the midpoint of the Pluto North Node. And so they're very, very close. It takes Pluto into the future rather than to the darkness of the past.
Right, and she's answering that question that we all have about how do we exit the body and what it all means, and the dilemma of death that we all have to face and travel through.
I
Okay,
think
next up,
I was just going to say her ascendant, descendant, both rulers are in the sixth house, Pisces and Virgo. So the Neptune and the Mercury are both in the sixth house of service. I mean, that was her service of healing, trying to help people heal from the impact of death on their lives. By understanding what the people are going through.
Yeah. And they both go back to the sun, which is conjunct the North Node, which of course is where we're going and what we're supposed to be doing. And it's about being creative in the fifth house. And she creates this concept of the 5 stages of grief that we all go through at some point in order to finally resolve the issues of those issues of loss, abandonment.
And she's still used today.
Here's a bi-wheel. We have Sigmund Freud on the inside and Carl Jung on the outside. So for Freud, his Chiron's at 5 Aquarius, which is a performer of a mystery play. For Jung, his Chiron is at 26 Aries. For imagination, a lost opportunity is regained.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, he was a student of Freud's for many years, but then they had a falling out, supposedly over astrology, because Jung used it and Freud didn't. But even after that, then Jung went on to establish his own notoriety on his own. So yeah.
I think the performer of a mystery play is apt for Freud because he was dealing with the unconscious, which is a mystery still. Nobody has been able to come up with a theory that explains consciousness.
Yeah, that's
a mystery.
It is a mystery, yes, because I think in part we really aren't consciously aware of what consciousness is. It's hard to say. I mean, and when you start getting into the field of quantum physics, it's like becomes even more clouded because the theories that, well, we create our own reality. Okie dokie.
What about their Chirons? Freud's in Aquarius and Jung in Aries.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we interpret that?
Okay, let's see what's going on here. 5.
Well, there is a trine between the Chiron and Jung's Jung's Chiron and the Mars in his Sagittarius.
Yeah,
It's
so yeah,
funny.
yeah. Young, oh, young. Where's he? Mars and Mars. There it is. Said. Yes.
And
Yeah,
if you
so
look at the sun, the sun conjunct the Jung's sun is conjunct Freud's moon is conjunct Freud's sun, and I think that's why they were, they were very close friends. He was with Freud for over 12 or 15 years. He was head of a lot of things that in later life. He was involved with the heading of a sanitarium. But the point of it is that later then it was like a breakup between a father and a son when you read about how Jung went his own way with the theory of unconscious and the archetypes and couldn't accept the drive of the libido as being the ultimate drive of the unconscious.
yeah, but I think it's also interesting that Jung's Chiron is conjunct Freud's Venus, both at 26 Aries. So yeah, they had some very strong connections there.
Right.
And North Node.
And the North Node, yes.
And certainly in the astrological realm, we consider Jung's work so strongly. Freud is almost forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're right. So who healed who?
Mm-hmm.
Jung healed us.
Yeah. Now here's something else that I noticed. Okay, so Freud is born May of 1856. Jung is born July of 1875. So there's like a 19-year age difference. However, Freud's Chiron is at just above the ecliptic at 18 minutes. Jung's is at 13 minutes. So their Chirons are parallel. So even though we may not see a good connection, I mean, they're basically, it's a 25, yeah, 20.
And they have reversed nodes.
Yeah, they're separated by a quintile, the 72-degree aspect, I think.
Where is Freud's Chiron?
That's
the
81.
chart? Where is Freud's Chiron?
Freud Chiron is in his
Oh,
third
I see
house
it's
at
on the
5.
bottom. Yeah, third house, yeah.
Okay. I was
Aquarius.
thinking there's, but no, that's 30, 60, 81. Yeah.
So we're talking about Chiron in this
Lecture.
talk today. So how is their Chiron affecting each of these two men?
Yes.
So why Freud in the third house? How is that Chiron affecting him? And Jung's in his sixth house.
And with Jung in his sixth house, it became his
Wow.
and it's in Aries with his North Node. It's his training and a wide trine to his Mars and Sagittarius. Was his purpose in life.
And then also,
just wanted to say that actually Jung, he actually probably dealt with Chiron on a daily basis, meaning that, he was, he analyzed people on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, this is just an idea. I don't know if Freud actually did that, because at that point the history of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis, because they were both different in that sense, whether actually Freud did see people every day. Maybe he did. I don't know.
That's a great point, Simona. I was also thinking about Freud in the third house, which he's dealing with early childhood psychological development and how those unmet needs is almost strictly about what occurs with oral fixation and child early infancy, right? And that's where he spends his.
I mean, the thing,
study.
and I just want to add, because you were talking about the split between the two of them. I mean, the thing is that Freud, that was part of one of the reasons of their split was to do with their idea or their theory of the libido, of psychic energy. And Freud actually he believed, that psychic energy was sexual. Yeah, that was, and that comes back to the third house and the children. While Jung took it a further step, he did not see at all that it was that the source of psychic energy is basically sexual. He saw it as what he called the religious drive. So
spiritual drive.
The religious drive. So meaning that, it was to do with meaning and purpose, and so.
What is the sixth house again? Isn't it, what is the sixth house?
Daily service, work, health, the body.
Oh, health and the body.
I'm not sure about the houses.
It's routine.
But can I make a quick comment here to build off what Simona just said? So
Yes.
I think somebody mentioned in Jung's chart the Mars trining roughly the Chiron. What I'm noticing in both charts is that there is a Mars trine to Chiron in both the charts of Freud and Jung. And I wonder, building off what Simona just said, if it's interesting to think about, for example, the signs that each of them are in. So in Sigmund Freud's chart, we see Mars in, I forget if it's detriment or fall, but Mars is in Libra,
Yes.
which is it's a tougher position for it to be in. And both Jung's Mars and Chiron, which are in a trine aspect, are in signs in which Saturn has, at least traditionally, its rulership or exaltation. Right, and if we connect Saturn with a more sort of maybe restrictive way of looking at things, right, as well as them both being in air signs, which has a certain quality that is maybe more likened to some aspects of Freud's approaches to psychology. I wonder if that poses a contrast to, Jung's Mars Chiron, which Mars is in Sagittarius. The Chiron is in Aries, and those two signs, right? I think, Simona, you just said something about like intuition or meaning or something to that effect. And I think that Aries and Sagittarius, well, number one, it's Jupiter, it's Sun. There's a lot of that kind of intuition, right? And again, traditional astrology, Sun has its join the ninth house. Again, that kind of seeing, intuition kind of theme going on. I just find it interesting that both of them have that specific natal aspect, but they're in these different signs. And I wonder if some of those like rulerships and the signs that they're in can speak to some of the differences between the two, especially as it relates to how they dealt with Chironic themes, like pain and healing, things like that.
Well, I think what Simona said was very simplified. But also, like Freud's work is about this psychosexual, and Jung's work is more about psychospiritual. It's much more existential. It's about spiritual, the higher mind, and and Freud's work is really more based. It's about the lower chakras of the body.
I mean, Jung's, you could also say that, Freud's was a backward moving psychology, while Jung's was a forward moving psychology.
Yes.
And also, just to mention again, that, Jung, after all, was 20 years younger than Freud. So he was from a totally new generation, which is important to remember as well, so.
Yes, that's the job
Is
of
anybody, does anybody aware of when the split took place? Because there was a period in Freud's life where he wrote a paper in which he saw these hysterical women, and he said there was incest going on in the families. And when he presented it to the Psychiatric Association, they put him down. They said that's impossible. no man would do that. But it was, he said it was
I don't-
going
I
on.
don't,
And then
I
he
don't know the
changed
year.
he changed his whole mind. He reverted back to the other things. So the thing he did in psychiatry was say, no, the woman didn't have sex with her father or her grandfather or uncle or anything. She just imagined it and became the Oedipus complex and put women in a very bad position. I mean, in terms of psychology.
Mhm.
Well, I know they
I wouldn't be
came,
surprised if they split over that.
they split over symbols of transformation. So they came to America. They're listed in the Statue of Liberty of coming over for a conference in Connecticut. But it's when Jung wrote Symbols of Transformation and it became that whole spiritual kind of thing, because he was going to have it published, and that's what I was read, that's what they split over. The other thing that I wanted to ask is the difference between fate and destiny. And the way I understand it is fate is what we're kind of born with, and destiny is what we rise up to. So my favorite example to give my clients is the King's Speech, where the king George wasn't born to be king. His older brother Ed was meant to be king. George had a speech impediment. Edward abdicates, and then George has to rise up and he has a speech impediment. So when you listen, but he comes up to be king during World War II. So he's like this king so it's like his fate was to be born not to be king and have a speech impediment from his cruel mistress, but he rises up to his destiny. And I'm wondering, that's just an example I use, but I'm wondering if that's what Chiron is. It's like you're born with this wound. It's what you've got. It's your fate that you've got, but you're meant to rise up to something. I know in my chart, it's in the 9th house. And until I got to that place in the 9th house, it all fell into place. So does anybody have thoughts about that? Fate and destiny and Chiron?
I agree with you about that, actually, definitely.
Yes.
I can see that in my own chart. I've got Chiron in the 1st house, and it's to do with identity and with body, and it's conjunct my Jupiter, and through the whole of my life, it's been a process of how, kind of clarifying my identity to myself and, to the world as it was. So, so no, I agree with you about that.
Yes, and Simona, and powerfully harnessing your own identity out of your experience.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of forging it through pain, and through that, of course, being able to rise above it or live alongside it in a creative way.
Gigi, you raised your hand.
Hi, everybody. Hi, James. I'm Gigi. Remember, I used to go to Urban Cafe, but now I'm in Miami. So thank you for letting me in the Zoom. I'm not as advanced as everyone. I'm pretty good, but you were going to give an example, I think, about how to use the house placement and the Sabian symbol to read to figure out someone's Chiron and how it would be read to a client. And my question to that is Chiron your purpose in life? Could it be that sort of soul purpose that everyone is so, wanting to express, and that kind of actualization moment for people?
Yeah, it could be that. I don't know that it's the only indicator that could fall into that. But looking at, for example, taking Freud's chart, where he has Chiron in the 3rd house. Well, the 3rd house speaks to siblings, early childhood, early learning, short distance travels. It speaks to a variety of things, but so the one thing that would come up is, well, if somebody is wondering, for example, what they should do with their life, and you see that they have Chiron in their third house, you might ask, well, what did you enjoy when you were in school? What did you like to study? What did you like to do? Because the question I often ask is, what was it you wanted to be when you were little? What did you enjoy doing? Because if you're doing something that you love to do or enjoy doing that makes you feel good, then it no longer becomes work. It's now something that you enjoy. Now you don't mind. You don't mind going. You're not going to work. You're following your life path.
Well, yeah, sure.
Also, what Rita and Simona mentioned, it's not necessarily that purpose, but it's that I think it is oftentimes the wound, and I see it in people's charts all the time, where they have to transform it into alchemically into gold.
Yeah.
And Simona and Rita spoke on this really eloquently.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at the first or third house, particularly, you may be, or you could be looking at some type of an early wound where they bullied in school, for example. But again, we're trying to get away from just doing the wounded healer routine.
Right.
Because, sometimes there may have been something that happened in early childhood. Most of the things that happened in early childhood, we don't remember, unless it's something really traumatic. And then if our memory of it is one that is built by people telling us about it, more so than coming from our own memory.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the Freud piece. A couple of quotes that come to mind from Freud that I think are indicative of this third house placement is that placement about like not discount the power of words to affect a man's life. By words, a man may build another up or tear a man down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But also that he's known as the deviser of the talking cure. And so I think his articulation of primal drives and the child is the father of the man, to me, these feel like, Chironic kinds of developments. And the other thing I wanted to say about his relationship with Jung was that, ironically, Jung ended up violating a lot of like trust issue stuff because he kept having affairs with his employees, which I think speaks to his Chiron. And so I feel like Jung's shadow was exactly what Freud was speaking to. And that his failure to acknowledge that and to try and sort of sail over it is a little bit, the shadow side of that bit. Anyway, I kind of wanted to point that out because
thank you.
Jung's fascination with alchemy would be such a perfect kind of Leo type preoccupation. Anyway, and that both of them, developed whole methodologies that were a gift to the culture. And I think that's a little bit kind of the thing, right? That you kind of fuck up on the individual level, excuse my French, on the individual level, but create and share methodologies that are a gift to the culture. So anyway, enough about that.
No, that's good.
They were told that they both had father woundings. Both Jung and Freud had father woundings, and that Freud wanted to mentor Jung and actually move him into the place of being president of the Psychological Association in Europe. And of course, Jung was too independent to do that. And then they split after that writing of the Symbols of Transformation, which is a spiritual outlook there, symbolic, and Freud couldn't accept that.
Right, and it speaks right to his Chiron and Aries, Jung's Chiron and Aries himself, his head butting forward, and Freud's Aquarian Chiron.
The Mars Saturn conflict that they have between Freud and Jung is 21 Sag to 27 Gemini. Definitely shows what these ladies are talking about, that there was a thing where Freud wanted to mentor. And of course, if you use Mars as opposed to that, that was one of the conflicts they have, was that Saturn judgmental side with the Sagittarius side that wanted to reach her out. But I wanted to take one more comment here. Both of these guys have out of bounds planets, and they make a oh, help me, they're opposed to each other, the two sides. See, the declination is at 26 and 27. And so that would
yeah,
also,
they're contraparallel or just about contraparallel. But it's interesting because in Freud's case, it's his moon that's out of bounds north, which may have things to do with his, why he went through the childhood sexual trauma so much. Well, in Jung's case, it's Mars, and Mars is out of bounds south. And you have where Jung has a Mars Chiron in fire, Freud has Mars Chiron in air. So they're coming at things from a very different perspective. And yes, iPhone, you raised your hand.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm Gail. I read that Freud started out kind of by treating a lot of what they call hysterical women.
Yes.
And he treated them by listening to them. And if he listened to them long enough, out would come this tale of childhood sexual abuse, which, as someone else was saying, that he was thereafter he was laughed at by other doctors. And that then he changed it to know they wanted to have sex with their parents or whatever it was. And so he took a weird turn there. I think of him as the pioneer. And then Jung is the one who really opened it up to, more cosmic, dimensions. But
Yes. So yeah, I think, and I think part of that is because of the time, the age difference, and the time when things were happening, because there were things that weren't talked of back in Freud's days.
It was a Victorian era. You didn't talk about it.
You didn't talk about homosexuality or lesbianism or pansexualism or incest, things of that nature. They just weren't spoken of. That if you don't talk about it, it doesn't happen.
Right, and I can see why these boards would, of course, all male, all patriarchal, would certainly dismiss a woman's experience of rape or incest.
Still do.
Still do, right.
Jung is still Victorian. Jung is still in Victorian times too.
He starts, but by the time that he is really gaining prominence, it's no longer. He's past Victorian.
Yeah, he's way into the 1960s, so he's way past Victorian.
Yeah.
But also there was, the fact of historically, in terms of Freud, he was, it was the Jews were being persecuted at the time of when Freud was actually, when he was working as a psychotherapist. And I think that had a very big effect. We don't know exactly in terms of his, again, his childhood history, his life history, because he was a very what it called a Jew, which was traditional Jew, Hasidic Jew.
Orthodox.
Orthodox, sorry, thank you for the right word. And that was a very, very different from in terms of Jung, which, he had a very comfortable life, Jung. He married somebody who was rich, who actually, in quotes, took care of him. It's very interesting to look at their different lives. And like you said, Katarina, he did go to bed with his, and with his employees and with his, his clients. Now, that would never happen today. You'd be
Of course
struck.
not.
No, you'd be struck off. So that was kind of, at the beginning of the history of psychotherapy. I mean, when I think of that, it's kind of shocking in a way. But I don't think that Freud ever did that. What I've heard about Freud actually was that he was a very kind man. He used to give people things and money for people who were very poor, which a therapist would never do these days, things like that. He was very generous, very different from Jung. Interesting personalities.
Okay, I think we need to move on here just so we can get some of the, what's next? Marilyn Monroe. This is Marilyn's natal chart on the inside and her death chart, if you would, on the outside. So Marilyn's natal Chiron is at 0 Taurus, 9th house, conjunct midheaven, a clear mountain stream. The time of her death, which was, what I did was they gave a 2-hour time period and I split the difference. And Chiron's not going to change much in that time period. So 9 Pisces, which is an aviator in the clouds. It's interesting because in some ways with Marilyn, it's kind of like there was, at least in the beginning, this innocence about her. And it seemed like she was taken advantage of by a lot of people. And perhaps in her death, she found, the escape from having been taken advantage of by so many people and finding, peace. It's conjunct Jupiter at the time of her death. Chiron was conjunct Jupiter, and Jupiter often shows up in death charts where the transition is a relatively easy one. Now there, of course, there's still some mystery and controversy surrounding her death, but there was no. There's no clear indication or mention made of any obvious trauma, but again,
didn't she die
it's
of
one of those
drugs?
things where people wonder.
Didn't she die of drugs?
No.
Supposedly she died from an accidental drug overdose. Yes.
Right. That's kind of interesting. If you look, first of all, that her Venus is ruled by a Mars in the 8th house, and which is eventually then ruled by the Neptune in the 1st. I think that the idea that she came in as a clear stream and then left out kind of as a woman who had a great reputation but was wounded would be one way of looking at her.
Yeah.
Any reactions to that?
I have some
agree with you.
info on the death that I saw special just recently from a mafia, very well-known mafia guy now. He was actually in The Godfather, but he was the only real mafia guy. And he explained that they injected her vaginally with carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide or something, which is an old way of, like, the Russians had, where you won't see the needle in an autopsy. They also do it sometimes in the armpits. So that's an old mafia and an old Russian Soviet way of doing it. And that was because she was going to go public. They wanted her to with either Bobby or JFK.
Or both.
Yeah, right. They wanted her to sleep with one of them and take pictures so that they can get, it all had to do with Cuba and the the Bay of Pigs invasion, and the mafia wanted to get the casinos back in Cuba, and so they were pressuring JFK, and they wanted to get Bobby out of the picture because he was pressuring him not to do this, and JFK was giving into the mafia, and so then they got Marilyn involved because she was involved with JFK and all that, and they wanted to take pictures of her with Bobby on the camp because he was campaigning, and she wouldn't do it, and she's like, it's enough. And they were there at her apartment, and she said, I'm going to the press with it. I'm done with this. I'm going to the press with it. And that night, that's what the mafia guy said. So I can't verify that, but he's written a book out of it, and it's kind of a thing that's out now. That's the new evidence on it. So who knows? But they have done that before, those injections.
Okay, Michelle M., you raised your hand.
Hi, guys. I might have missed this because I had a baby kind of being loud in the background, but I'm noticing this Chiron and Venus, which hits for me, especially with her clear femininity and how that was such a big part of, not only who she was, but also the, sorry, hard to focus with that on the background. But, with kind of persecuting her as part of it, even now, she's the sex icon, but then we shame her, because, well, she was a different size, or she was too sexual, or she was just over and over and over. And so if there's any comments on that, I'm open to it, because I too have Chiron on Venus, and it's interesting. Not quite Marilyn Monroe status, I'll tell you that, but
Oh, don't be shy now.
It is awesome.
In relationship to that Venus and the way she's looking, I was going to ask, when did she change her name? When was there a change, maybe from that innocence to the sex symbol, which is sort of, I don't know if that's a clear question.
From Norma Jean Baker to Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, because you have Marilyn Monroe, but it's Norma Jean Baker.
Yeah, it was relatively early in her career.
Yeah, it was a strategy for survival. Like I love these Sabian symbols, Jim. Thanks for bringing them, because she comes in as a clear mountain stream. I think she's in what we would now call, early adverse childhood experiences, rough family, difficult poverty, negligent family, and she has to become an aviator of her own life. So bringing in that Sabian symbol. To come up with a character for herself and a strategy for survival through her beauty, and by hook or by crook, makes her way forward.
No, I was just thinking, we see her birth chart, we see her death chart. It might be interesting to see when she actually transitioned from this innocent girl to Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, I can look it up.
We would want to take a look then at progressions as well. Let's see, iPhone Gail, you had raised your hand. iPhone Gail?
She already spoke and forgot to take her hand down.
Oh, okay. Do you have anything else, Michelle? Oh, okay.
So that was me.
It is interesting. I mean, she would be an interesting study. And she was always, she generally was thought of as being like the dumb blonde type. But all indications were that she was really fairly intelligent. Yeah, and she could engage in intelligent conversations with, knowledgeable people, educated people. So she wasn't a dumb blonde. She was smart enough to play one, to make a name and a fortune for herself that way.
Right, it's what society cooked her into as Madonna whore, which was standard at the time.
Society did that to all of us blondes, let me tell you.
Right, and also just to recap, I'm on Wiki. She spent most of her childhood in foster homes and orphanages. It's a strategy of survival for her to take that role and move up, and very early on, I think.
But they also had the Hollywood machinery that would take these, like Judy Garland, who changed her name too. And these Hollywood people really would drug them, make them do things, and put their name up there in lights.
Well, yeah, and I think the fact that Chiron's at 0 degrees of Taurus symbolizes that new beginning, a whole new energy. But because it is so close to Venus, less than 2 degrees, even though it's an out of sign conjunction, it's still a very tight conjunction. Allowed her to bring that fiery Aries Venus into her persona.
Well, 0, I think about the 0 degrees as being almost like an infant and almost nothing, no power of one's own, really not, she's not coming in with a 29 degree.
Yeah, you're coming in with a clean slate. What are you going to write on?
A blank canvas.
Yeah, or a blank canvas, yes.
Yeah, which someone painted on.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
Wow.
Like, I wanted to say something about the Clear Mountain Stream. I know, to me, like, it feels like Chiron is much underrated, and that Chiron, there's many gifts. Of course, we talked about that. And I know that in 1970, I have Chiron connected to almost every planet in my chart, pretty majorly. And in 1970, I wrote a book. And I wrote a book. I said I would write a book. I haven't done that yet. But the preface was and I just remembered this sentence. There is a river that flows through me and out into everything which I have ever touched or felt, cleansing and rendering holy the heretofore broken fragments that never seemed able to make themselves coherent to one another. I don't know, that just came to me right now, because it's been a journey, and I of course have studied astrology. I've been done chiropractic and music and all those things, and it's not been an easy journey. So I just want to say that, but I really feel that Chiron holds more power than we realize. The gift being in the wound.
Yeah.
But I feel that's a quote from Martin Lass, but I kind of feel that. In that,
Yeah, thank you. I want to jump ahead here. We've looked at, here's Christine Jorgensen. I'm going to jump past her though.
Yeah, I think you have too many charts, Jim.
Oh my gosh.
I think when he had like a list of 20, I was like maybe 3.
No, there's no such thing as too much information in my world. So I tend to overload. I don't want to come up short. Okay, so let me just hit some high points here. So Christine Jorgensen was, as I said, one of the first people to come out publicly about having had a sex change operation from male to female. Natally, look at it. I mean, she was born just a couple of days before Marilyn, so that Chiron was still at 0 Taurus, the Clear Mountain Stream. And when she had the first surgery she was 25. At that point, Chiron was at 27 Pisces, an old bridge over a beautiful stream. So for her, this was the beginning of the life she was meant to live. She was born with the male genitalia, as I'm classified as a male, drafted, served in the military, but in reality, that wasn't who she felt she was. The Stonewall riots, which started June 28th of 1969 in Greenwich Village, New York. At that point, Chiron was at 6 Aries, which is a man successfully expressing himself in 2 realms at once.
Oh.
Wow.
Here you have it.
Wow.
Yeah. These guys, they're coming out. Yes, I'm a man and I'm gay and I love another man. Thank you very much. That's who I am.
Jim, where do these quotes come from? What book are you using for Sabian symbols?
I'm actually pulling the ones off of that Solar Fire uses.
Oh, okay.
But you can use any of the Sabian symbol books, and it should be fairly consistent.
Okay.
So now, one thing that was interesting is at the time of the Stonewall riots, the Moon and Mars were both out of bounds south. Okay, here's our USA chart.
That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah, this is for with the secondary progressed and transits as of February 20th of 2022, which is our first Pluto return. First Pluto return. So when the United States was established July 4th, 1776, that's on the inside, we see the natal chart, a pugilist entering the ring. Well, that's kind of us, isn't it? We're just looking for a fight. Oh, and we seem like we still are.
Yes.
The secondary progressed, that was at 20 Aries. Secondary progressed is now at 17 Aries. Now, mind you, it hasn't gone all the way around. It's gone forward a little bit, stationed retrograde, and gone back, stationed direct. So it's actually still behind where it was when the country was founded by progression. And 17 Aries is an empty hammock. Well, that's because we're busy, want to get in the ring and fight somebody. By transit on the date of the Pluto return, it'll be at 10 Aries. So we're approaching another Chiron return. And the Sabian symbol for that degree is the president of the country.
Ooh.
And it's interesting, that all three of them are in Aries, which is where Chiron is at its most distant from the sun. It's traveling in the realms of Uranus. And, it spends like 8+ years in Aries. It's a long transit. And it'll be interesting to see how this then plays out. The Chiron return itself won't happen until I think it's 24.
Right.
And then it's like we get about 3 of them, I think, 24, 25. So we're going to be looking at the USA Pluto return charts in December when we take a look at 2022. But this will give you an advanced look. I'll send you the PDF with this chart there so you can play around with it.
Thank you.
Okay, so here is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Biden has Chiron at 28 Leo, a mermaid emerges from the ocean. And Harris has her Chiron at 14 Pisces, an officer preparing to drill his men. I guess, they're not as, and her Saturn is opposing his Chiron. Almost exactly.
It's also on his south node.
Yeah, and on his south node. So yeah, she's his mermaid. Here you have our boy Donnie and his wingman Mikey. So Trump has Chiron at 14 of Libra in the second house. Circular paths. Okay, that guy goes round and round and round. Yeah, it's
it doesn't change.
Yeah, and Mike Pence has it at 27 Aquarius, a tree felled and sawed. Yeah, no, he kind of got whacked off at the knees.
Oh, my goodness.
Generally speaking, the least effective vice president we've had for a while. Isn't necessarily saying all that much, but Trump didn't give him much to do, and then when he did ask him to do something, he did what he should do and didn't do what Trump asked. So, okay, here we go. Here's the Chiron discovery chart with the natal chart of Charles Kowal, who's the discovery. So we have Chiron, the rainbow spot of gold. Charles Kowal has Chiron at 1 Leo, which is an epidemic of mumps, which kind of goes with the concept of Chiron as a healer and being wounded. So I would, when we say wounded healer, to me, that's kind of like overemphasizing the wound as opposed to his healing, because he was better known as a healer than for being wounded. I mean, that was just how his life ended. Okay, here's Kennedy. JFK has his Chiron, 29 Pisces, showing up in his 6th house. The Great Stone Face, a projection of the ideal. That was certainly how he was perceived by most of America, and still is by many. Lee Harvey Oswald, on the other hand, Chiron at 19 Cancer, Gondoliers in the Serenade. It's kind of like he thought he had a message to deliver, and this was how he was going to deliver it. And at the time of the assassination, not his death, which was like half hour later when he was pronounced. Chiron, where'd you go? 10 Pisces, men seeking illumination. That one could interpret as meaning Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone. He certainly was inspired by someone or something. And it seems to me rather, I've always been puzzled by Jack Ruby shooting him. It's like, you're a little mobster. What do you care about this? I'm sorry. Yeah, it doesn't make sense that these two men would act independently of each other and do this. That's just me. Robert Kennedy. Bobby's Chiron is where it is, 24 Aries. Ooh, that was interesting. In the 12th house, a double promise reveals its inner and outer meanings. And that could be looked at many ways. Yes, there was a promise. He had a good chance of winning, being nominated, and he was going to get the nomination and of getting elected. Sirhan, a bride with her veil snatched away. Chiron at 11, Virgo. Rather strange. It's kind of like, though, here he was, just a relative no one, who suddenly steps into the limelight. He is seen by, the veil is snatched away and he is seen. Now, this is when he was shot, and he died about 26 hours later. A cameo profile of a man in the outline of his country. Chiron at 2 Aries, which is basically conjunct Sirhan's sun Mercury. And so wait a minute, did I skip? Here it is. There's Martin Luther King. Somehow I double jump here. Martin Luther King. Born with Chiron at 5 Taurus, conjunct Jupiter in the 12th house, a bridge being built across a gorge. Certainly the path that he was on, trying to bridge these huge gap that still existed in America. James Earl Ray, born 10 months prior to Martin Luther King, had Chiron at 2 Taurus, steps up to a lawn blooming with clover. Obviously saw himself as doing something for the greater good of. He believed in, it seemed like he believed in or was looking for some glorification in what he was doing, and certainly gained notoriety for his act. And the assassination, Chiron at 0 Aries, a new moon that divides its influences. Now, certainly the assassination of Martin Luther King was rather divisive for the country at the time. And I think it can be interesting to think about how all of that might have played out in the months ahead, had it not then been overshadowed in some ways by Robert Kennedy's assassination 2 months later.
I'm just looking at their Taurus conjunct
Yeah. So,
Chiron,
yeah. So we have
Mars.
when he was assassinated, Mars was on his Chiron
Mm-hmm.
in the 12th house.
Well, natally, they both have the, what, is it 2 and 5 degrees Taurus?
Yeah.
Mm,
2 and
it's
5.
almost bound like twins in
Yes.
some way,
There,
or through the Chiron.
there was a destiny. And natally, James Earl Ray has his Mars at 8 Aquarius, making a square to the Mars at the time of the assassination.
Mm.
So yeah. Okay, there's RFK. Here we go. Okay, summary. All right.
Oh, that was fast.
So hopefully we've given you some at least food for thought, ways of looking at Chiron as being more than a wounded healer. He's the rainbow bridge, the bridge between worlds, cultures, and lifestyle.
Hello.
Yes?
Hi, Emily. I'm almost finishing this Zoom meeting. I'll call you as soon as I finish.
Someone doesn't have themselves on mute.
Nice to hear from you. Bye.
Patrita.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
Mute yourself, baby.
Excuse me?
Oh, were you talking to us or was something else?
No, somebody called me and I just finished the call quickly.
Okay, so we have, and the key, so you think of, when you see the Chiron placement, look at aspects and see how your Chiron maybe, or the person's Chiron may be serving as a bridge between those points and what they might represent. Consider Chiron as a key. It may be the key to understanding a early childhood trauma or something that happened early in childhood that we have buried, or it may be a key to connecting with, what am I supposed to be doing? It's a key that can connect that which is within us to that which is outside of us. It can connect that which we see to that which we don't see or don't want to see. And keep in mind that doors have locks and the keys unlock those doors. So are you on the inside looking out or the outside looking in? Chiron deals with issues of abandonment, self-sacrifice, betrayal by friends, accidents, rising above. It just deals with physical, psychological wounds, scars, and the treatment. Because he was a healer. And he could heal everybody else, but he couldn't heal himself. Accidents because, Hercules didn't mean to shoot Chiron. It wasn't his target. It was an accident that Chiron got hit. Chiron was a great student. As a younger person, became a teacher, mentor, coach, a guru for others as he got older. There is the matter of the family dysfunction, okay? You remember, Saturn is the son of Uranus, and it was Saturn who overthrew Uranus and took the throne away from him. And then Saturn's children did the same thing to him. So here we have this family dynamic of trying to heal the family dynamic. And maybe in this case, it's not Chiron's wound that he's trying to heal. It's the wound between Saturn and Uranus. So Chiron can be more of the healer rather than the wound. Feelings of being unloved or finding love in a unique way. Unloved, well, he was rejected as a child. And so, yes, there may be a sense of being unloved. But he did find love. He got married. His wife was an earth spirit, not a centaur. So it wasn't like he married someone like himself. And he has no rulership. Contrary to what some would argue, I don't see Chiron as having any rulership. He doesn't have the presence to rule anything. If you're going to give him rulership over Virgo, then you pick some other little piece of rock to give rulership to, say, Libra. And then what are you going to do with all these other pieces of rock that are much bigger and can be more influential in their own way? I mean, after all, the centaur rock that is Chiron's wife is much larger than he is. So maybe, you know, she should be the ruler of Virgo if you want to start looking at things that way.
Yeah, if we call it relationship of those
Yeah, it's
asteroids
more
have
like-
relationships to
Yes,
various
I would prefer to
signs.
say, you know, I think words like affinity or is, you could even say he might be exalted in certain signs because of a connection with some aspects to it. But he doesn't really connect to Virgo, in my opinion. He doesn't connect to Libra. He doesn't really connect to Sagittarius because Sagittarius, in fact, was not a centaur. Where the constellation came from was somebody else. If you want to give him rulership, he rules the constellation of Centaurus. It's one of 88 named constellations. There's one of the 45 from Ptolemy, and it's one of the 88 that they still use today. So there's your rulership. So what's in, you know, if you want to, then you could start looking to see, well, what is in Centaurus that might connect to a person's chart? And you're probably stuck with looking at fixed stars. Because I don't know of any bodies that are sufficiently off the ecliptic to fall that they come into and or go through Centaurus. Okay, let's see. Our next meeting, October meeting, is going to be the third Sunday, not the second Sunday. So it's going to be on October 17th. We're going to talk about chart patterns. Chart patterns are distinguish those from aspect patterns. The chart pattern looked at all of the planets, the 10 planets together. What pattern do they make? Aspect patterns involve 3 or more planets making some type of a pattern, such as a grand trine or a square or something. We're doing the third Sunday because, as it happens, the second Sunday, October 10th, is my 34th wedding anniversary.
Yay.
Yay for me. That's twice as long as my first one.
Congratulations.
Wow, you got to have 2 good marriages. Wow.
Yeah. November 14th is will be our next one after that. That is the second Sunday. And still on plan, I'm going to be doing a talk on an introduction to and the case for prenatal astrology. Okay.
Yeah.
That which happens in, you know, that which your mother experiences while you're in the womb, you also experience. And how does that then translate into who we are today? And I'm actually going to take you back to your grandmother. December 12th, it'll be our last one for 2021. We're going to take a look ahead at coming year 2022 and what it has to offer, plus the USA's 3 Pluto returns. November, we should probably also take a look at the 2 eclipses that are coming up for the rest of the year, for the end of the year. Thank you all for your continued support and participation. August was our 15th anniversary.
Wow.
Congratulations.
It was.
Yeah, Spencer and I have been doing this for 15 years now.
God bless you.
August of 2006, we took over.
It's a
Where
great
does the
group.
time fly? Any comments, questions, suggestions? There's Spencer's email, my email.
I hope we can continue on Zoom regardless of when we
Yes.
can reconvene in person, because I think it's brought people from all over the world. It's been so great.
It is our intention to continue to the Zoom. Where we used to meet, the Urban Cafe, we were able to find out it has closed.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah.
until we can get out in the world and find another place that's like it that we can meet, that will accommodate a hybrid meeting, we're Zooming.
It's not completely, it will be open, don't you think? They're saying it's never going to be open? I think
I have no information on that.
it will be. I'll be talking, I know at some point, but it's just things keep going on. They have to keep postponing it. So
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, last time you were over there, Spencer, it was closed, right?
It was nailed shut. The whole thing was, I mean, there were boards on windows and stuff. Do you know really, Carolyn, that they're going to open it up?
the last time I talked to Pam was about 5 weeks ago. I'm going to call her again, she's pretty determined to open it up, but because her mom, she's trying to take care of her mom who's in the hospital and in and out of intensive care and a bunch of stuff. But
yeah, I've tried calling a couple of several different times over the months, and it's gone right to voicemail, and
yeah, I don't think,
there's been no, and my mailbox is full. We're
I'm
not active.
gonna do my best to connect with her. I have her phone numbers or different.
Okay.
I have a feeling she will, but it's gonna maybe push back a bit now.
Yeah. Well, the way things are going, who knows? We may go into another lockdown again.
Yeah.
It won't. I doubt we'll lock down, no matter how, unless it gets really, really, really bad. I don't think we're going to go through a lockdown again. They'll just put on restrictions. And so, thank you. I'm feeling safe here at home in bed.
Yeah, thank you. It's so great being able to be
Thank
here.
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You know,
It's been a great.
this is it. This energizes us.
Yeah,
We love you all. Thank you all so much for your support over the months and years. And I look forward to seeing you all next month when we'll be talking about chart patterns.
Right. Great.
And thank you to Cornelia for providing a lot of information on the different chart patterns. Okay. Yes.
Yes, I have a question to Cornelia. She mentioned an article that had to do with mental chemistry, and I tried to find it, and I have been unable. If she could help me with that. It was an article on the mountain astrologer you mentioned, but
yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Yes.
But I can't tell you right off the top of my head what issue it was. You might call Mountain Astrologer and ask them.
Yeah, they're really good about that.
Yeah. Bob McCransky was the author.
Yeah, Bob McCransky.
Right. Okay. Yes. And it was called Mental Chemistry. So they should know
chemistry?
where it is.
Okay, I'm gonna try
Mental
that.
chemistry. Yeah.
Patrita, I'll find it and send you the link.
Oh, thank
send
you.
you the
I will
article.
appreciate that so much. I've been looking for
Oh,
it.
that would be great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for presenting Chiron in a new position, in a new beautiful healing persona.
You're very welcome. Again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Recording will stop now.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.